Spaghettification. What is spaghettification? It is certainly a mouthful, pun intended, but what is it? Please allow me to explain what it is first before we dive further into my talk today. I can assure you certainly it has nothing to do with spaghetti mixed around with science fiction. In astrophysics, spaghettification actually refers to when a lonely star all of a sudden wanders a little too closely to a black hole. And when that happens, there will be a process of the black hole using its gravitational force, pulling the stars right into the center of it, and the star itself will become to be torn apart into spaghettifies. So when this actually happened, the process later on resulted in that star being torn apart and being let out as a result into a very bright flare of debris. And this debris will wander across the space looking for its next destination. The concept, this astrophysics concept, actually is very much related to the talk that I have today, whereby it is very much closely, if you actually have a look at it, being referred to the development of creative portfolio. Therefore, you can actually see that the star itself, if you take into this conceptual thing, the star itself, you can actually refer this as your creative or your current creative portfolio. When that particular star or your creative portfolio actually hits a speed bump whereby you've been sending it to everybody here and there, to all these jobs, trying to actually show that you've been working on this for so long and actually means a lot to you, and you think that it is wonderful, but people don't actually appreciate it. So you'll feel down, but what happens is, don't feel down too long. What needs to happen is you take your creative portfolio and you go into a process of creative brainstorming, where I actually say spaghettification. The creative brainstorm is a process of where your current portfolio is being shredded, is being discussed, is being torn apart, so that later on there will be more creative input. But sometimes maybe crazy ideas would be most welcome itself. By doing so, the final result that you'll be seeing at the end of the day is a very fantastic flare of bright, brand new, jazzed up, yummy, spaghettified creative portfolio, much better than you had before. Before I further elaborate what are the process of spaghettification that can actually help with the development of your new creative portfolio, let me quickly share with you what I have been done throughout my own professional life, how I had been spaghettifying some of the ideas that actually helped me when I was working back then. Around 2004, I moved to a dream job back then for many boys and girls back then, which is as a game design, video game designer. It was also for a local video game studio, and what we did back then was Malaysia's first MMORPG, or massive multiplayer online video game. So we were also at the same time trying to, in my work with the comic studio, for the video game studio, every month we need to give out new patch or new update to the players out there. Hey, here's a fresh new content. And in one of those situations, it's not that we don't have any content because everything had been pre-planned. This is where one of our level designer actually just built a particular city, and it was just finished from A to Z. But from the original plan, that particular city was supposed to be, massively destroyed by some sort of dragon. Many dragons, by the storyline of that we have created, the city itself has to be destroyed. So again, the city has been built from 3D, all the 3D modeling animation is all done, and we still have other things to do. So how do we fix this? Spaghettifying time again. I bring up all the developers, all the artists that we have. We start to dish out ideas here and there. How do we actually fix something that's already been built so that the fans who actually love the story actually are following this is the right story? The conclusion of that is we come up with an idea of, hey, what about this? Let's all of us as a team go in the game as players, but not actually just any human character. Everyone goes in as dragons, and we become dragon ourselves and start to destroy all the cities. And what happened is, it's not actually destroyed per se, because what we have instructed to our programmer, take this whole loop recording of the destruction of the city, so that whenever a new player comes in, this particular event will be triggered for them every time a new player comes in. So player actually loved this. That month's review was amazing, because supposedly originally the plan was they come in and check out the ruined place where the dragon had destroyed many years ago. But now, with this idea, they are actually in real time, actually are trying to defend the city as the heroes. So, you can actually see the idea of spaghettification or creative brainstorming had been very, very amazing to the things that I have been doing. And I have not even yet started with the rest of the jobs that I've been doing for the last 20, 30 years. So now we know that the process of just, the usual brainstorming is to actually to come together and discuss a project that has not been created, so that, you plan well ahead of time. But to actually, brainstorm something of a project that has already been created, for example, like a simple artwork or a video game that's already been developed or a music composition, this is where the idea or the ideation process of spaghettification is really, really much needed. Now, let me share with you the key ingredients of this process of spaghettification. Number one is mind mapping, or how I would love to call it as the pasta, all right? So with mind mapping, this is where you are actually able to use some sort of visual tool, and you are actually able to sort out some sort of drawing, so that you are able to show from the beginning where is the idea that you have or your current portfolio, and how and where, how, and to whom can it branch out to, so that from this idea you can start to develop, what happened if I actually go to the process of to the left or to the right. For example, if you have an idea, or if your current portfolio is about some sort of design of an apple maybe, and you want to make it even more fantastic, so this is where you use your mind map to actually branch out, maybe a change in the color, maybe in the change of a shape, maybe in the change of a different fruit maybe. So anything can go very well when you actually have a very, very wide known of a mind mapping tool. So that is number one. Number two is the SWOT analysis, or how I would call it, the SOS. So the SWOT analysis is actually a collaborative analysis tool where you identify exactly just like the spelling itself, SWOT, which means the strength, the weaknesses, the opportunity, and the threat. Say for example, if your creative portfolio is some sort of a music composition, right? So with the music composition, you start to identify what is the strength that is there in your music, in your audio. What are the weaknesses that made it not being accepted to this publisher or this company or this studio here and there? What are the opportunities that your music can actually extrude to? This is where it can go. It might not go into a music video, perhaps it can go into a presentation, perhaps it can go into a TV advertisement. And last but not least, what are the threats? Maybe something like, maybe the content that made those studios not being accepted to your audio. So maybe a change in that would actually be much more cooler or much more acceptable. Then once you identify SWOT right here, then you are able to go even much more crazy idea with SWOT analysis here. Let's say, for example, the strength of the music, it is something to do with pop. Why not go crazy by actually mix it around pop and maybe some sort of grunge music? Maybe some sort of beatbox that people have never heard of? Those are really cool ideas, and a lot of people like those trendy stuff for sure. The third key ingredients to spaghettification is where I love to call it as the cheese, but in actual name of it, it is reverse brainstorming. What is reverse brainstorming? It is actually like brainstorming, but when you do it in reverse. How do you do it in reverse? Original brainstorming, here's the problem, here's the issue, how do you solve it? In a reverse brainstorming, you start by, how did this happen? How did this issue happen? You begin to identify what are the things that made that particular things happen. Say for example, in the creation of your creative portfolio, your portfolio was not accepted by those employers or by those studios. So you begin to identify, you begin to not actually ask, what do you call this, brainstorm how to make it even better. Reverse brainstorming is where you start to say that, where did it go wrong? Should it be something, should we fix this particular artwork? Should we fix this particular, what do you call this, level? So that is, should you do it? But reverse brainstorming is, how did it happen? Was it because of the color? Was it because of the audio level? Was it because of the content? So when you ask this in reverse, you are then able to track back, since this is how it happened, so how do we fix it from the core to make sure it does not result in that way? Pretty cool idea. So this is where you actually think in reverse, totally out of the box. The fourth item, also my favorite, is called role storming. So slightly different from brainstorming, and this is where I call it as the meatball, basically because I just love meatballs when you add it together with spaghetti. But anyway, role storming is whereby in the process of brainstorming between yourself and perhaps a few other people within the group, this is where each and every one of you actually take on a role, so that you are able to actually give out your own view. How did this particular creative portfolio not being accepted in those places? You, for example, you have a friend who actually, can pretend to be in the role of those people who rejected your portfolio. So that, what is your idea of, they give the view on why did this portfolio being rejected? The next person, why did you reject this? Another person, another person, another person. So then it will be like a solution whereby when every one of your friends actually give out their input on why they do it, and because they are your friend, they can elaborate even further on why they actually reject it, or maybe why did they actually accept it. Some of it might love it, some of it might hate what you do. So, but at the core of it, this is where when it is being elaborated and clearly to you, this is where you can take each one of their input, and then you are able to continue and fix or maybe modify your own creative portfolio. Pretty handy as well, because if you have like 3 to 4 people who are your friends and they can elaborate even further, then you have much more creative input and creative control over how you can modify things. So at the end of all this, your final result should speak globally. And when I say speak globally, it has to be loved and accepted all over the world, wherever that you send your creative portfolio. Should you send it to the US, make sure that your creative portfolio is as tasty as their burgers and fries. If you're going to send it to France, bon appetit, make sure it's as tasty as their croissant. If you're going to send it to Japan, make sure with all the itadakimasu, make sure your creative portfolio is as delicious or, sushi-fied as all their sushi, this onigiri or some sort of sushi that they love over there. And of course, if you're gonna send it locally to Malaysia, make sure that your creative portfolio, your spaghettified, make sure you don't send any spaghetti, but make sure that you have changed it so much that it will be some sort of a mouth-watery nasi lemak sambal lebih extra telur lebih muah, that the local studio would love your ideas. To conclude my talk for today, using the method of spaghettification or shredding your ideas and rebuilding it back so that it will be much more creative and crazier for the studios out there to accept and love it, why just stop to only spaghettifying your creative portfolio idea? Why not push it even further to other sectors? Because the idea buffet can be very, very much unlimited. Instead of just on your idea itself, why not push it towards the marketing idea? There are so many things that you can do with your creative portfolio, but you should be telling it to people out there. Today, social media giant like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course TikTok, you can actually, with the push of a button, you can actually send all this anywhere for people to actually view online with just one touch on the screen. And you can actually do this very, very quickly at any time. So by doing so, when people actually just viral, if it actually happened to go viral, your content, your animation or your art or your website or your apps or anything that you do creatively, if it actually went viral, people and those studios out there will be thinking, wow, this is amazing. This work is very, very amazing. Who did it? You. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk today.